Who's Ryan Miller again? And is Ryan Miller here? Ryan Miller's not here. He usually sits there. Michael's here. Justin's here. Keith's probably in the stream. Emily's here. Alex is here. Zach is here. Matt's here. Owen's here. Sam usually watches in the stream. Alex Burns is here. Who did I forget? What's your name again? Anthony, thank you. Who am I missing? Actually, no one. Oh, and there's people on the stream. Hello. Good to virtually see you. Ryan, Samuel, Akif, Matt, sick. I kind of want to just wait another minute or two because attendance is a little low right now, but we'll get started very, very soon. I hope your weekend was excellent. I myself went to the zoo and it was awesome. Also, the zoo, certain places, I don't know if you've experienced this yet, or if you agree, but certain places are better now. The zoo, there's like no one there. No one's coming up to me. I don't have to worry about kids running around. It's great. Say what?
No people are going there.
Yeah. Well, they're also staggering it. So they're only selling a certain number of tickets per hour. But God, much better experience, honestly. I love grocery shopping. Nobody's like rubbing up against me anymore. I don't have to worry about running into people from high school because I can hide behind the mask. Certain things, I'm like, oh, this has its benefits. Whenever I leave the house with a mason jar full of coffee, my girlfriend's like, dude, you have mugs. Like, you have travel mugs. They're really good. They'll hold the heat better. I lose them after like one day. The mason jar I can hold on to. I don't know. But if I get a nice mug, it's gone. It's gone in a day. My mom knows this, and she buys me a travel mug every year for my birthday. I have never kept one for the year. All right, it is almost 8:05, so we're going to get started. I see 4 people in the chat. Okay, you've all reported in. That's good. This week, we are going to be doing, I called this week personal history, and we're going to be digging a little bit into our own personal histories and our own creative histories eventually. Especially surrounding the family, at least for the first 2 days, because it can yield enormous amounts of material for creative work. There's Flannery O'Connor, really great American writer. Flannery O'Connor once said that if you survive childhood, you don't need any more material for the rest of your life. And I've always thought that was interesting. Like, you can always go back and dig into childhood and to find something to write about. But I'm not actually necessary. That's like a byproduct. The thing that I'm more interested in is just insight. And even when we don't get a poem or an essay out of it, because we often don't, right? We almost always come away knowing ourselves a little better when we think about, okay, where did I come from? How did it influence me, etc. And for better or for worse, insights about our family are always insights about ourselves. So we're just going to be drawing some data today for the hopes of understanding a little better how we think and how we create. So with that in mind, I am going to read this poem by a guy named James Allen Hall. This is from his book called Now You're the Enemy. James Allen Hall was my professor at Potsdam for a while. And I picked up this book like years after he had taught me. And I love it now. And it's mostly about his mom, which is one of the reasons that I picked it for today. So this poem is called A Portrait of My Mother as the Republic of Texas. And I don't know if you know this, but there's an organization in Texas that called the Republic of Texas, that claims to not be a part of the United States. They claim that they are their own little sovereign thing. And the U.S. is kind of like, okay, just do what you got to do, I guess. So there's a group of people living in Texas right now that claim to not be Americans. And so this is a portrait of my mother as the Republic of Texas. James Allen Hall is also from Texas. After my mother won independence in 1836, she dysfunctioned as her own nation, passed laws, erected monuments to men who would never again be slaves to order and pain. Remember the Alamo? That was my mother. Then, in 1845, that always pleasing church mouse voted for annexation. My mother had too many selves and the desire to enslave them all. Pregnant, she was forced to become the 28th child of the American family, Lone Star no longer. She joined a lineage of jacked to Jesus hair, developed insatiable cravings for honey barbecue. Her uncles sauntered up, stroked the thin lace of her, declared that she looked mighty good. She let them say mighty good while grinning at one another. Nothing grew then on the prairies of my mother. Then she learned dissent, demanded men recognize her sovereignty. She organized an embassy in a silver trailer shaped like a virgin bullet. My mother renamed herself the Republic of Texas, unfurled her flag all the way into the 1980s, when the Republic kidnapped her neighbors, Joe and Margaret Rowe, to highlight abuses she had suffered. My mother was an American terrorist. Don't mess with Texas. She died in the standoff. My new mother was elected by a landslide and moved to Cuero, a city whose largesse depends on retirement pensions. My peaceful mother holds weekly rallies. What do we want? When do we want it? Her lipstick stains the bullhorn red. In her spare time, my mother receives foreign dignitaries and does drywall. The global conglomerate of my mother opened her first staffed consulate in Barcelona. She insists visitors speak American. Currently, the Republic is facing lean times. The former treasurer neglected May's duties, refuses to return the funds. Pledge your support today. My motherland is standing by the rotary phone waiting for your call. Love her or leave her. I love that poem. I love that poem, I think, because this extended metaphor as the Republic of Texas is like super silly, right? She like declared sovereignty and slavery, right? It's like all these big things that a person can't do. But I get a sense in the poem of who she is, right? She must be this woman with like a kind of like bombastic personality, right? You get a sense that she's like a kind of overwhelming person to be with sometimes. And you get a sense that like it's kind of funny sometimes too, that she herself is ridiculous. And all these things are intuitions that we can pull out of the poem based on this extended metaphor. So today, what we're going to be looking for here is any insight into the workings of your own family and thus the workings of your own mind. Parents can tell us a lot about how we think. So it's worthwhile to spend some time with that network of relationships in focus. And if you feel like no one raised you, that's fine. There's still lots to write about. And if you feel like many people raised you, that's fine too. But we're going to keep it to like the main two that you can sort of triangulate, just for the sake of time. And for the record, when I say that we're going to describe these people and not analyze them, what I mean is I want to avoid the why when it comes to how people behave. We're not here to give ourselves or anybody else armchair therapy. We're just going to try to maintain a certain distance and continue to pull data from these relationships for the purposes of study. And I hope that makes sense. So first, pick one of the primary people who raised you. For most, it'll be a parental figure. So the first thing to do is to describe them. I suggest you begin by describing them physically for just like a minute or two, and then zero in on some details of their personality. It might also be useful here to include historical details that you know about their life. So, by way of example, my father is a slight, humorous, deep-voiced math teacher with a deep love of his garden. He also dropped out of RIT in the 70s because his dad made him go here, and my dad didn't want to be an engineer. He's also been a chef, and for a while, he owned an electronics store. He has a massive library of sci-fi and mystery paperbacks in the basement, which have long since overflowed off of the shelves and now just stand in stacks and boxes and stuff all over the basement floor. And he loves woodworking. He's super into woodworking, and he builds boats by hand. So this is like a pretty decent, like really quick sketch of my dad. These are just like the details that pop out of my head first, right? I notice as I look at it, though, that it's mostly missing the aspects of his personality. So if I had more time, that's where I would sort of stop and course correct and start filling in more details afterward. So let's get to sketching. Describe this person. We're going to do this for 4 minutes. About 45 seconds. That was weird. That was weird, right? Okay. Okay, so next. I want you to try to describe, and again, not necessarily analyze. It's a hard line to ride, but describe how this person thinks. Now, you can't know this, right? You don't know how a person thinks. And there's a theory that even if we were able to read each other's mind, we would still be completely illegible to one another because everyone's thought just requires so much shorthand and implication and sense memory. So you can't know this. So there's an inevitable gap that we're trying to bridge here, but that's kind of the point. So it can be extremely useful to take a crack at this. And I want to reiterate, I'm not asking you to analyze why they think that way or moralize about what they do well or do poorly. I'm only asking you to describe how they think with a certain amount of detachment and precision. Does that make sense? As much sense as it can? All right. How does this person think? Go. About 20 seconds left. Okay. So now you can take that person, and we're going to put them sort of aside for a second, and we're going to do the same thing again with another person. So pick a second person who raised you, and we're going to do the exact same thing. First describe, and then we're going to describe how they think. So second person, first describe them. Try to avoid how they think for right now. Go. About 10 seconds left. Okay. I hope you are already starting to notice stuff about the writing process here. I certainly am. I'm noticing that one of the people that I chose is significantly harder to write about than the other one. I like ran out of stuff a lot quicker for the second person. I was like, wow, why is this so much harder? So now I'm, thinking about it. This is what we're going for, right? Not just insights about the person, but insights about, I think writing sometimes is a really good measure. When you write about something, you can take a kind of temperature of your relationship to the thing you're trying to write about. So let's go for the part 2 of this, which is describe how this person thinks. 4 minutes. Go. About 30 seconds. Okay. Finish up your sentence, which I am doing. Okay. Okay, so now we are going to zoom out. We're going to zoom out slightly and think about hopefully these two people that we've chosen in relation to one another. And if they didn't hold the same literal household, I think this can still work. I'm calling an audible in my own head as I think about this. Because the question I want to ask here is one I became interested in as I was building out the lesson, which is, we're going to start with, what was explicitly valued between these two people, or in the relationship between these two people that you've chosen, or in the household in which these people lived. And so if they didn't live in the same household, then think about instead within their relationship. But if they did, then you can use the house as a sort of space for this metaphor to work. So my question is, what was explicitly valued and not valued? What were the things that the people who raised you explicitly said that they did or did not hold up as values? Some of these will be true across all of our families. For example, even the most dysfunctional families pay some kind of lip service to honesty as a value, right? But others will be very unique to your own experience. For example, my father has just like straight up contempt for any kind of government oversight, and like a deep, intense respect for privacy, right? He hates government surveillance. He talks shit about the government all the time. He's like almost a conspiracy theorist sometimes, right? And this comes out too in the way that, like, as a kid, one of the things that I can say I feel like he did well was he always respected my privacy. He knew that was like a thing that would benefit me to see respected, right? So another way to ask this question might be, what values were talked about, good or bad? You know, what values were expressly said yes to or no to within the dynamic? Does this make sense? Are there any questions currently? Sick. Talk to me.
Is it the values between like the people in the relationship, or the values like of like the family?
I think it's I think I want it to be a little bit broader in the second way, because I think it's not just related to these two people. It's also you with person A and you with person B, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, do it. About 30 seconds. Okay. So the next question is a little bit harder. What was, based on what you're seeing here, and of course what you know about the people that you've chosen to write about, what was silently valued and not valued? This one's harder, is why I've saved it for last. I think another more roundabout way to ask this question would be, what consistently goes or went unsaid in the household? And can you extrapolate any quiet values based on what has been left unsaid? What subjects did everyone tiptoe around, and that you had to pick up your knowledge about from other sources, right? That's why like socialization is so important, because there's just stuff that each parental unit, whatever it's made up of, isn't going to cover for a million different reasons. And so you get a different education from your friends, right? Your friends have different parents than you. Those parents are teaching those kids different things. So what was quietly not valued and valued within your house? And I feel like it's important to remind you that nothing here is ever going to be read by me or anybody else if you don't want to. So if you like hit a pocket of something super uncomfortable, that's fine. You can choose to do with it whatever you want. You can go deeper, or you can put it down and walk away and do something else and write about something else for a moment. Okay, that's totally fine. Like I said, we're not doing therapy. We're just looking for data. So what was quietly valued and not valued? Maybe as a result of these explicit values. Because when I look at the explicit values for me, I think, oh, but this means that there's other stuff we didn't talk about, right? So I'm hoping you can kind of use one as a jumping point to the other. All right, 4 minutes. About 30 seconds. Cool. Okay. This is one reminder. If you are in the stream, please put your name in the chat because I am marking who's here. Okay. So this is how we're going to finish. I'm going to leave you with a choice at this point in the writing exercise, which starts with a question. Do you think it's possible to look at the material that you currently have and use it as a word bank much in the way that we've been doing before and start working on a creative piece, specifically a poem, right? Do you think it's possible to start with a detail about one of your two people and start building it out into something? For example, I could start with the image that has stuck with me most is the piles and piles and piles of books that my dad has in the basement, right? Because they're an accumulation of knowledge, but they're also like getting kind of old and musty at the same time, right? There's a bunch of different themes happening inside that image as I think about it. So that's probably where I would start. So this is where our paths will diverge depending on your mood today. You can either keep just doing the free write and I'll throw a question at you. I can pitch a last question at you, or you can start using what you've got as a word bank, hop to a new page, start doing the line breaks, make the poem. So if you start with the poem, obviously this is going to be like your loosest concept of word bank that we've worked with so far. You don't have a word bank so much as you have a collection of impressions and sensory memories and ideas and feelings, right? That's more than enough to start when it comes to working on a poem. And if you prefer to just keep doing the straight up writing, which is fine, the final prompt that I'm going to ask you is, so you've described a lot about other people and other relationships and their minds, but now I want you to think for a moment, how has all that information been filtered into and through you? In other words, what impact do you think all of this had on how you see, how you think, and how you behave in the world? So those are your two options. Either start working on a poem, just use this collection of stuff as a word bank and go. Or ask yourself the question, okay, well, what does this mean for me? Is that clear? Any questions? Do it. Okay. We are at time. I don't think I have any announcements or housekeeping for you guys. There's no readings for Wednesday. So if there are no questions, we can get out of here. Have an excellent day, and I will see you soon.